Imagine pouring 12 years of your life into building a company from nothing, only to be fired by a new CEO who dismantles everything you created. That's what happened to me. When a Fortune 500 giant acquired our startup, they promised growth, but delivered betrayal. They didn't just fire me. They tried to bury my new venture with legal threats. But what they didn't expect, I had a plan, a team, and a secret weapon that turned their mistake into my triumph. Stick around to hear how we fought back and won against all odds. Your role doesn't align with our corporate structure, Elena Navarro said during a brief Zoom call. Your department is being consolidated. My name's Nathan Pierce, 44 years old, Senior Development Director at Vertex Technologies in Fort Collins, Colorado. For 12 years, I built systems and led teams that transformed us from a struggling startup into a respected name in renewable energy solutions. Every major platform we created, every innovative process, I had my fingerprints on them. I didn't argue or show emotion when Elena delivered the news. I asked about the transition process, logged off, and stayed professional to the end. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I sat in my home office reviewing the non-compete clause in my contract. The language had loopholes, big ones. The acquiring company's legal team was sloppy, probably assuming employees from a smaller firm wouldn't notice or fight back. Their mistake. My phone buzzed with another message from Lila, our lead system architect, the 5th engineer to reach out since the acquisition. You were right about the new management. They're gutting the innovation pipeline. Are you still thinking about that project we discussed? I set my phone down without responding. Not yet. Timing mattered. The acquisition was celebrated across the industry. Horizon Energy Corporation, a Fortune 500 behemoth, absorbed our promising upstart company. The press release praised our complementary capabilities and shared vision. Elena Navarro, their newly appointed CEO for our division, promised minimal disruption. We value the talent that built Blueforge. Empty words. The first layoffs came within 8 days. I opened my laptop and reviewed the business plan I'd been refining for months. Not because I predicted being fired, though I had suspicions, but because I saw the company's trajectory changing even before the acquisition. The executives chased quarterly profits instead of innovation. When Horizon made their offer, our leadership team practically tripped over themselves accepting it. Their eagerness was the first warning sign. In the kitchen, I poured a cup of coffee and looked at the whiteboard on the wall. It listed Blueforge's top clients, their pain points, and the solutions our team had built, solutions soon to be dismantled by people who didn't understand them. Below the clients was a list of 5 engineers, the best minds at Blueforge, people I'd mentored now, privately asking what came next. I hadn't answered them yet. My plan wasn't ready. I joined Blueforge when it was just 11 people working out of a converted warehouse. The founder, Margaret Ellis, had a vision for revolutionizing commercial energy monitoring systems, but lacked the technical framework to execute it. I created that framework, building our first viable product during 80-hour weeks, while my marriage slowly collapsed under the strain. "You're married to that company," my ex-wife said during our final argument. She wasn't wrong. For over a decade, I declined offers from larger competitors with better salaries and benefits. Margaret made me feel valued. "This is your company too, Nathan," she'd say. We didn't have formal equity agreements, a mistake I now recognize, but there was always the promise that loyalty would be rewarded when the company succeeded. Then Margaret developed health problems 3 years ago, and her son Lucas took over. Lucas had an MBA from an impressive university, but lacked his mother's passion. He focused on making Blueforge attractive for acquisition rather than building something lasting. The culture shifted. Quarterly metrics replaced innovation goals. When I raised concerns in executive meetings, Lucas would nod politely and change the subject. "We'll circle back to that." Nathan became his standard response. We never did. 6 months ago, I overheard Lucas in the conference room with 2 Horizon executives discussing which teams would be redundant after the acquisition. My department topped their list. That night, I began sketching what would become the blueprint for Summit Dynamics, a competing firm built on everything Blue Forge was abandoning. I kept my plans quiet, continued performing excellently, and waited. If they kept me, I'd stay loyal. If not, I had an alternative ready. The first sign my position was in jeopardy came when Elena scheduled meetings with every department head except me. Then I was removed from strategic planning emails. Finally, Claire from HR requested a quick chat about my team structure. Still, I updated documentation, trained junior engineers, and made myself indispensable, or so I thought. 2 days before my termination, Elena asked for access to my project archives and development roadmaps. I provided everything promptly, professional to the end. When the Zoom call came, it lasted 7 minutes. She didn't know that. While she explained my transition package, I was texting Lila. Time to talk about that project. Dinner at my place tomorrow, 7 p.m. 5 engineers showed up. They all had the same story, marginalized by new management innovations, shelved concerns dismissed. They were waiting for someone to build something better. The moment that crystallized everything was Elena's first company-wide presentation. 6 weeks after the acquisition, with 47 people laid off, she stood on the stage that once showcased our technical achievements and unveiled Horizon's integration roadmap. Blue Forge's systems will be phased out over 18 months, she announced as we transitioned to Horizon's enterprise architecture. That architecture was outdated by at least 3 years. Our team had developed solutions because Horizon's approach couldn't handle modern clients' complexity. Now they were scrapping our innovations to force-fit their framework. In the audience, I watched the remaining engineers exchange glances. They knew what this meant. Years of work erased, client needs ignored. The innovations that made Blue Forge valuable enough to acquire would be dismantled. I didn't speak during the Q&A or challenge Elena's assertions about synergies and economies of scale, I observed, who nodded along and who stared at their notebooks, avoiding eye contact. After the meeting, I walked to my car in the parking garage, sat there for nearly an hour, engine off, thinking. This wasn't just about losing my job. It was about something I'd helped build being deliberately dismantled by people who didn't understand its value. That evening, I opened my laptop and finalized the business plan I'd been developing. What started as a contingency was now real. I created a secure messaging group with the 5 engineers who came to my house after my termination. If you're serious about building something better, I have a proposal. Discretion is essential. All 5 responded immediately. For the next 3 weeks, we met in the evenings at my house. We identified flaws in Horizon's approach, opportunities they were missing, and clients likely to be dissatisfied by the changes. We mapped out what made our Blue Forge system superior and how we could evolve it further without violating intellectual property laws. I used my severance package to secure a small office space and file paperwork to establish Summit Dynamics. The name was chosen to evoke elevation, rising above what Blue Forge had become. The day after receiving my final paycheck from Horizon, I got a message from Lucas Ellis. Heard you might be starting something. We should talk before you do anything hasty. I didn't respond. There was nothing to discuss. The time for conversations passed, when Elena decided my 12 years of contributions aligned with nothing in their corporate structure. Instead, I sent a message to my team of 5, office space secured, legal documents ready, timeline accelerated, are you ready to resign tomorrow? 5 variations of yes came back within minutes. I closed my laptop and looked at the framed photo on my desk, the original Blue Forge team from 12 years ago. Margaret's arm around my shoulder, both of us grinning at the first working prototype. "This one's for you, Margaret," I said quietly. "We'll build it right this time." 3 months after launching Summit Dynamics, we secured our first major client, Voltpeak Manufacturing, a mid-size production facility that had used BlueForge systems for years. Their operations director, Malik, had worked closely with me on customizations for their energy management needs. "Horizon's integration team doesn't understand our requirements," Malik said during our pitch. "They keep trying to fit us into their standard package." We demonstrated our new platform built on BlueForge's core principles, but with significant improvements. Malik signed a contract the same day. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from Horizon's legal department citing breach of non-compete and theft of proprietary information. They demanded we cease operations and threatened litigation. I had anticipated this. Our attorney, Priya Sharma, reviewed the letter and confirmed what I knew. Their non-compete is poorly constructed. They reference energy management solutions too broadly, and they have no evidence of proprietary theft because there isn't any. Still fighting a Fortune 500 company would drain our resources. I requested a meeting with Elena. She agreed, perhaps thinking I'd be intimidated. We met at Horizon's gleaming downtown office, the BlueForge logo, now a small corner of the reception area. "You understand this can't continue," Elena said as we sat down. "Your company competes with technology you developed here. The technology I developed is being phased out per your own roadmap," I replied calmly. "My non-compete prohibits using BlueForge's proprietary systems, which we aren't. Summit's architecture was built from the ground up." Elena's expression tightened. "Regardless, you violated the spirit of the agreement and poached our employees, former employees who left voluntarily after the acquisition changed their roles." She leaned forward. "Nathan, let's be practical. Horizon has unlimited resources for litigation. You have, 3 months of capital. Why put yourself through this? We could bring you back as a consultant. A 2-year contract. Excellent compensation." There it was, the trap. They didn't want to reinstate me. They wanted to bind me legally while neutralizing any competitive threat. "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up, "but I'll take my chances with Summit." That afternoon, Horizon escalated. They contacted Voltpeak and 2 other potential clients, warning them about legal issues with Summit's technology. Malik called me immediately. "They're threatening to audit our systems and void our maintenance agreements if we work with you," he said, frustration evident. "We can't risk that disruption." Within 24 hours, we lost all 3 prospects. Our runway shortened from months to weeks. The team gathered in our small office that evening, faces tense. They looked to me for direction. "They're playing hardball," I acknowledged, "but they've made a strategic error." I pulled up an email from Margaret Ellis, BlueForge's original founder, who'd been watching the acquisition unfold from retirement. "Nathan, I've been following what's happening. Horizon didn't just acquire BlueForge's technology, they acquired its problems too. Call me. I think we can help each other." I looked at my team. Horizon is so focused on crushing us that they're neglecting their integration. We know the weaknesses in BlueForge's original architecture better than anyone. Margaret says they're already experiencing system failures with key clients. Lila nodded, understanding dawning. "And those clients will need solutions, fast solutions. Horizon can't deliver in time." "Exactly," I said. "They're trying to bury us in legal threats while their technical foundation crumbles." The meeting with Margaret changed everything. We met at her lake house outside Fort Collins, away from corporate eyes. At 72, she moved slower, but her mind remained sharp. "They didn't just buy BlueForge for the technology," Margaret explained, spreading documents across her dining table. "They bought it for the client contracts, especially the Nova Energy Group account. Nova was our largest client, a regional utility provider serving 3 states. Their contract represented 30% of Blue Forge's revenue. What Horizon doesn't understand is that Nova's infrastructure requirements are unique. Margaret continued, their grid management system was customized extensively. You led that project, Nathan. I nodded. 4 years of development nearly burned out my team getting it right. Margaret slid a confidential memo across the table. Internal Horizon communications, forwarded by a loyal board member. They're promising Nova seamless integration while planning to force them onto standard Horizon architecture. The timeline is impossible. The memo outlined a 6-month migration for a system that took us 4 years to build. Worse, it dismissed Nova's requirements as unnecessary customizations to be standardized. Nova's CEO doesn't know yet. Margaret said, but when implementation begins and limitations become clear, I finished her thought. Nova will face service disruptions, possibly regulatory issues if they can't maintain required reporting. Exactly. And here's what Horizon doesn't realize: the contract I negotiated with Nova includes performance guarantees, significant penalties for systems that don't maintain 99% uptime. This was new information. Horizon hadn't just acquired our company. They'd inherited obligations they couldn't fulfill. No wonder they were aggressive about shutting down Summit. They feared we'd approach Nova before their integration failures became evident. But there was something else in Margaret's expression, a personal edge. Why are you helping us? I asked. Horizon paid you well for the acquisition. Margaret's gaze hardened. They did. Then they used clauses to devalue the final payment based on integration costs. Lucas didn't understand what he was signing. The deal that made headlines. We received about 60% of that figure, and my son's stake was wiped out. There it was. Horizon had manipulated the acquisition to pay less, using complex financial mechanisms Lucas hadn't detected. They hadn't just discarded the Blue Forge team, they'd cheated the founders too. Does Lucas know you're talking to me? I asked. Margaret shook her head. Lucas took a position with Horizon's corporate development team. He believes he's being groomed for leadership. Her voice carried motherly disappointment. He'll learn eventually. As I drove back to Fort Collins, a new understanding crystallized. This wasn't just about my termination or Horizon's poor decisions. It was about corporate predation, acquiring smaller companies for their client relationships, extracting what they wanted, and discarding the rest. The engineers they fired, calculated losses, the promises they broke, negotiating tactics, the technologies they dismantled, inconvenient complications. I pulled into my driveway and sat in silence, processing the implications. Then I called Lila. Contact the team meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. We need to accelerate development of our Nova-compatible system, and I need you to pull every piece of documentation on their grid architecture. Are we going after Nova? Lila asked, excitement mixed with apprehension. Not yet. I replied, but we'll be ready when they start looking for help, and they will sooner than Horizon expects. We had 8 weeks to prepare for Nova's inevitable crisis. The team worked around the clock, developing a platform that seamlessly interfaced with Nova's infrastructure while offering needed improvements. I maintained distance from Nova executives, knowing Horizon was likely monitoring contacts. Instead, I focused on building our capacity and evidence base. We documented every public failure in Horizon's integration, creating a comprehensive analysis of their flawed approach. Meanwhile, Margaret activated her industry network. Without referencing our strategy, she raised questions at energy sector conferences about the challenges of forced system migrations. The conversation reached the professional circles where Nova's technical leaders participated. The first major crack appeared 5 weeks into our preparation. Horizon began Nova's system migration and immediately hit issues we'd anticipated. 3 substations experienced monitoring failures, creating gaps in regulatory compliance data. Nova's CTO, Riya Patel, publicly called them expected transition challenges, but privately, according to Margaret's contacts, she was furious. 2 weeks later, when the second phase caused a 4-hour reporting blackout across a service region, the situation escalated. Nova issued a formal notice of deficiency to Horizon, triggering the performance guarantee clauses. Horizon's response was telling. They blamed inherited architectural limitations from Blueforge, setting up a narrative to void the guarantees by claiming the original system was defective. That was our opening. I drafted a technical analysis showing the failures stemmed from Horizon's incompatible integration, not Blueforge's architecture. Margaret delivered it to Riya Patel. 3 days later, I received a text from an unknown number, "Coffee tomorrow, 2 p.m., West Side Brew," signed simply RP. At the cafe, Riya was in a corner booth and got straight to the point. "Your analysis matches our findings," she said quietly. "Horizon is forcing us into their system to avoid maintaining our customizations. The regulatory risks are unacceptable. You have options," I replied carefully. "Do our contract with Horizon is binding. Breaking it would trigger penalties exceeding our technology budget. Unless Horizon is in material breach through performance failures, I suggested, which your legal team is likely exploring." Ria's slight smile confirmed my assumption. We'd still need an immediate alternative. Regulatory reporting can't wait for a new vendor process. I slid a flash drive across the table. This contains a technical overview of Summit's platform. It was built to address the issues you're experiencing. We can deploy within 3 weeks with 0 regulatory interruption. She pocketed the drive. "Horizon claims you violated non-compete agreements. They've made that claim, but their legal position has weaknesses which our counsel has documented." I provided a second flash drive. "This contains our attorney's analysis. Your legal team will find it illuminating." Riya nodded. "I'll be in touch." 2 days later, Horizon announced an emergency stabilization of Nova systems, admitting their integration had failed. Their stock dropped 8% by market close. That evening, Nova sent an official request for proposal bypassing their normal procurement process under emergency provisions. I gathered our team. "This is it. Nova needs a solution now, and we've built exactly what they require. Everything we've worked for comes down to this proposal." Lila looked around at our small but determined team. "Should we worry about Horizon's response when they realize what's happening?" I shook my head. "They've created their own crisis. Now they'll watch us solve it." The Nova board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday. By 10:45, my phone rang. "Unanimous approval," Riya said without preamble. "Expedited contract execution. Implementation begins Monday." Within the hour, our attorney confirmed the contract was clean, no hidden clauses or traps. Nova agreed to our full implementation fee, plus a 3-year maintenance agreement. The numbers secured Summit's future for years. More importantly, the contract included indemnification against Horizon's potential legal claims. Nova's attorneys reviewed our position and confirmed Horizon's non-compete claims couldn't hold up. The news hit the industry by mid-afternoon. Horizon's stock dropped another 12%. Their legal team filed for an emergency injunction to block our contract. The hearing was set for Monday morning, the same day our implementation began. At the courthouse, Horizon had 4 attorneys led by their chief counsel. Elena sat behind them, her expression tight with anger. The judge reviewed the filings and looked at Horizon's team. "Your non-compete prohibits using proprietary Blueforge systems, but evidence suggests Summit developed independent architecture. Furthermore, Nova's filing shows urgent public interest in maintaining utility service reliability. She denied the injunction without further deliberation. As we exited, Elena intercepted me in the hallway. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Horizon doesn't lose." I met her gaze. This was never about winning or losing. It was about building something that works. I walked to where my team waited. Together we left to begin the implementation that would secure Nova Systems and Summit's future. The quiet victory felt complete. 18 months after the Nova contract, Summit Dynamics grew to 27 employees. We occupied an entire floor in downtown Fort Collins, with views of the Rocky Mountains that witnessed my professional collapse and resurrection. The Nova implementation was flawless, completed ahead of schedule with 0 interruptions. Word spread. 4 more major clients migrated to our platform within a year. Horizon abandoned their legal pursuit, focusing on containing damage to their energy division. Elena Navarro was reassigned to a subsidiary in another state. Lucas Ellis left for a startup incubator, Wiser. For the experience, Margaret occasionally visited our offices, pride evident as she watched a vision reborn. She never officially joined Summit, but her guidance was invaluable. On the 2nd anniversary of my termination, I received an email from my former boss at Blue Forge, who hired me 12 years earlier. "You built something better than we ever could have." He wrote, "Some of us saw it coming but couldn't stop the acquisition. Some victories take time." I closed my laptop and joined our team celebrating a new module's completion. These were no longer just colleagues. They were partners who took the same risk, believing competence and integrity would outperform corporate politics. Later that evening, I stood on my deck watching the sunset paint the mountains. The bitterness of betrayal had faded, replaced by gratitude. Without Horizon's arrogance, without Elena's dismissal, Summit might never have existed. I hadn't just reclaimed my career. I'd built something more aligned with my values than Blue Forge could have been under Horizon. Sometimes being pushed out of the wrong place is exactly what you need to find the right one. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this journey from betrayal to triumph. If this story of resilience inspired you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of overcoming odds. Drop a comment. Have you ever faced a setback that led to something better? I'd love to hear your stories. Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that setbacks can be setups for success. See you in the next one.